Now, there's a whole lot of talk in the ag world, row crop and everything about ROI, return on investment. And that's a very important term. There's no sense in doing something if it's not actually going to make you a profit. Well, let me tell you, the one thing I've learned over my farming career, the one single practice that gives you the greatest ROI, return on investment, is putting it. All right, I just couldn't help myself. I had to come over here and dig some soybeans up and see how close they are to emerging. Like I said, today's Saturday. We planted this on Tuesday. Now, we planted them pretty deep, but they should be getting pretty close. Yeah, she looks good. I expect her to be maybe a little bit farther along than that, but say we put them fairly deep. Oh, wait. There's that one right there. She's about to pop out of the ground. There's another one. Yeah, every single one of them I've seen is germinated. They're not quite as far along as I was expecting considering the temperature, but every single one of them is germinating and they ought to come on up. I'd say all these ought to be up before the next chance of rain we get, that will definitely be good. All right, we just ran out of our last variety and filled up with our next variety. Before I tell you about that, look at this spot up here. Ever since I was a kid, every year we have planted it, it has been nothing but a mud hole. Just can't get a planter through it because of all that water draining out of the hillside where it's that fragipan and just starts moving laterally. But look at that, perfect planting, nice and dry. And there's several other spots behind me too, same thing. All of those are dry. Man, that tile has turned this field into a different field. I'm super tickled. In fact, the only problem that I've seen out of the tiling job so far is where they ran the trencher, every 40 foot. Even though Carter and Andy came in a month and a half ago and plowed that into the field up and smoothed it out, that dirt's now settled. So we got a depression every 40 feet. So probably one more year of coming in here and plowing and smoothing it up, have this field completely ship shape. So I sure am glad to see that, because initially I was kind of worried with the tile because all over Facebook, people are showing pictures of their tile lines running and you got a full pipe of water just blowing out of there, and we never saw that out of ours. And that's kind of what I was expecting. Even after we got that 11.5 inches of rain in 3 days, still didn't see it then. Then I got to thinking, that end of the field that we've got tiled, I mean, it's only 8 acres that's running to that main line. Whereas all these other guys where I see on Facebook or whatever, their whole field is tiled. They might have 50 acres or 100 acres or whatever running, draining through one main line. Well, I mean, when you're only draining 8 acres through a main line, you're not going to get that full flow. So after realizing that, I felt a lot bigger about the tile job. And man, I wish I'd done it several years ago. Heck, I might have come close to paying for the tile by now if I'd done it several years ago. So anyway, the variety that we just filled up with is DeKalb 6744, first BT variety that I'm planting this year, fully traded variety. And originally, it wasn't one of my picks on what I was going to plant. We planted it a couple years ago one time, and I mean, it did good, but I was really expecting a lot more out of it based upon what I've seen from everybody else. I mean, this is an older variety, been around quite a few years. It's won a lot of NCGA plots. I mean, really high yielding variety. So that's kind of what I was expecting on our farm. But I mean, it did good, but you know, it wasn't a head and shoulders above anything else I had planted that year. But anyway, you know, what I was originally planning on planting this year was Pioneer 1464. It was going to be the only Pioneer variety I was going to plant this year, but 1464 is no longer being produced by Pioneer. But I thought there's a good chance I could get some out of cold storage, you know, some old stock or whatever, and plant it one final year. But finally around March realized we weren't going to get any, and then I had to choose a different variety. And by that time, you know, the newest, popular, highest yielding varieties, you know, were pretty much gone, spoken for. Want any hope of getting any more conventional seed, or probably not even any Roundup ready seed. So anyway, this variety kind of fits my goals for this year. It's, you know, it's not Roundup ready or conventional, but it is at a pretty attractive price point because it is an older variety. It's got a very proven history, and while, you know, I don't necessarily expect it to blow the doors off, I do expect it to perform really well this year. And now you see down here in the bottom, you know, we're dropping it 30,000. You know, the highest population will plant on 38-inch rows. But as long as this variety has been out, it would not surprise me if this is the last year it's going to be produced. Would not surprise me a bit. Alright, we got wrapped up the home place, got moved over here to Dunlap. I'm not going to do very much. What I am trying to do, because Monday's going to be test plot day, I'm trying to go ahead and get my plots laid out for the Pioneer and University of Tennessee, so when they show up first thing Monday morning, we can just load seed in the planter and go and get them planted. So not only we got to plant plots for them, I've also got 2 sets of my own plots over here, and I will tell you more about them Monday morning. So anyway, I think we got like about a bag left in the planter, so we're gonna get these laid out, try and get that run out, and we'll see you back here Monday morning. All right, we're getting a little bit late start this morning, but this is a late start I'm happy for. Yesterday, Sunday afternoon, we had 0% chance of rain predicted. We actually wound up getting a little shower. We got about 1/10 of an inch, just out of the blue. So based on what I said on a video or 2 videos ago about, you know, missing that rain that I was expecting to get our nitrogen incorporated on the first batch of fertilizer, I was super excited because about 1/10 of an inch, I mean, is enough to move it into the ground. So while I know we did lose some nitrogen from the urea volatilizing, going back into the atmosphere, I really don't think we came close to losing all of our urea. Now, how much we actually lost, I mean, nobody be able to tell you. We did lose some nitrogen, but been doing some thinking. I'm thinking there's some ways that, you know, we're going to make up the nitrogen. You know, we just applied 2 tons acre chicken litter. That's going to have a fair amount of nitrogen in there. It did get rained in. Don't know how much we're going to get from that. We've also got the, you know, the organic matter that we've been building in the soils. That's going to release nitrogen over the course of the season. Then we've also got all this cover crop that's going to be releasing nitrogen over the season. Probably not going to get a whole lot from the cover crop because the legumes was not all that great in there. And then on top of all that, we've got the micronoc that we applied to the seed. We got those azotobacters in there. You know, research has shown that those azotobacters can, you know, sequester, you know, somewhere 50 to 80 pounds of nitrogen per acre. So I'm not going to count on that, but I think between all of those factors could help make up for the difference in the nitrogen that we lost from, you know, going an extra 2.5 days without getting a rain. But anyway, over here on Dunlap Farm, this field right here is going to be our research field. We're going to have a lot of plots over here. We're going to start off first thing this morning planting our University of Tennessee and Pioneer variety plots. So won't show much of that, shown plenty of it in the past, but I think we're going to be testing somewhere in the ballpark of 22 different varieties on this field. And then after we get done with variety plots, I've got 2 other sets of test plots that I'm going to put in, you know, research of products and practices, and I'll be sure to explain that a little bit later in this video. But I think it's going to be extremely interesting on the results we're going to see. Now, there's a whole lot of talk in the ag world, row crop and everything about ROI, return on investment. And that's a very important term. There's no sense in doing something if it's not actually going to make you a profit. Well, let me tell you, the one thing I've learned over my farming career, the one single practice that gives you the greatest ROI, return on investment, is putting in plots and collecting your own data. Doesn't matter what you're testing. Test anything that you're trying to be sold or a practice you're trying to be sold on. Test it, and test it scientifically. Don't just, split a field like this, do one practice on one side and one on the other, or one product on one side and then leave it out. That's not going to be testing it scientifically. Now, if you see a huge increase from one side to the other, well, there might be some to that, but most of the stuff we're testing is going to be incremental increases in yield, 2 to 3 bushels an acre, and you're just not going to be able to tell that from one side of the field to the other. In order to test this stuff scientifically and properly and make good sound decisions on it, you need to remove as many variables as you can. So that means doing it in a fairly small location where the soils are consistent. It means testing one product at a time. That means you take a product out and then right beside it you add the product in, or the practice, or so on. And it also means replicating that plot, because if you just try one plot, either using that product and then not using your product, you might see an increase, but is there some other kind of variable that you haven't identified that actually influences the yield? So the best way to do that is to replicate your plots. And on our plots where we're testing products or practices, we like to do a minimum of 4 replicated plots. That means in a block of land, we replicate that test 4 different times at least. Treated, untreated, treated, untreated, and so on. So that's going to give you the best data, the most scientific, the most reliable data. I also wanted to show you this cover crop right here. I'm mighty proud of this biomass. Now, this farm last year was planted in full season beans. Then we came back in and planted our corn mix. We have annual ryegrass. We have cereal rye. We have oats. That comprises our grasses. Relatively low rates of grasses, because we don't want the carbon to nitrogen ratio too high, which is going to tie up your nitrogen as the corn is trying to grow and utilize that nitrogen. We got crimson clover in here. We got balanza clover in here. We got hairy vetch in here. And we've also got Australian winter peas in here. That's going to comprise our legume, and that's what's going to be producing the nitrogen. Now, I have no idea how much nitrogen all these legumes are producing, but it's consistent all the way through here. We got more legumes than what we do grasses, even though the grasses are kind of showing out and growing a little bit taller. But I dare say we're probably getting at least 80-90 pounds of nitrogen produced out of this cover crop right here. Now, the vast majority of my cover crop going in front of my corn was aerial seeded into double crop beans. Because we had full season beans on this farm, we were actually able to harvest them earlier, so we were able to use the drill to plant these cover crops, and that's why we got such a better stand out here. I mean, I'm really tickled with it and impressed. I do have one big regret though, as mature as this is, because we're getting out here and planting a little bit later than what I was wanting to. Plus, we've had a relatively warm spring, so we've got more biomass accumulated at this time than what I would normally expect. I wish we had our roller crimper back together, because I would definitely have the crimper out here running behind the planter, because my one concern, we got great biomass, but without being able to crimp it, we're going to shade out that corn when it's young and coming up. And I haven't seen any kind of yield impacts from that. But what I have noticed is that the corn is going to be a little bit more spindly as it's coming up, because it's hunting for that sunlight. So, but ever since the fiasco with the crimper, we just have not had the time in the shop to put the thing back together. We've worked on it a couple hours here and there, but we haven't been rained out for an extended period of time to where we can get that thing put back together. The few times we have been briefly rained out, it's been doing odds and ends on the planter, fixing the sprayer, and other things we've been needing to do to actually get our soybeans and corn planted. And once we burn it down today with paraquat, a crimper's not going to work that well. The cover crop just won't lay down. It's kind of real springy, and it will pop back up. So it's not like we can go in and fix the crimper and then come back out here and roll it, because it just won't be that effective. Anyway, let me get the planter greased and oiled up, and we'll get our variety plots planted, and then I'll bring you back and show you the other research we're going to be doing this year. All right, we just got done with our variety plots. Got done in record time. I put in quite a few plots with these guys over the years, and let me tell you, they done got it down to a science where we can bang them out real quick. So now that we got that done, time to get on to our own plots. All right, now if you've been on social media following several other farmers, you've probably noticed a product that's really being touted. It's called Nutricharge, and what it's supposed to do is supposed to make your nutrients more available, because your fertilizer can get attached to the soil particles and everything, and the plant's not able to break it away. So while you might have good fertility in the soil, some of that fertility is not in the soil solution able to be taken up by the plant. And one of the big nutrient concerns, especially in corn, is phosphorus, and that's where this Nutricharge is supposed to come in. And Nutricharge isn't the only product that does this. You've got a Veil and other type of products that are supposed to make your phosphorus more available. Well, I've been seeing Nutricharge all over Facebook, YouTube, and other places, and I decided I wanted to test it myself. Now, my opinion of a lot of these additives and stuff is not necessarily positive, because I've not necessarily had a positive experience to where I've seen that these products actually pay or even give you a yield increase. However, we're always searching and testing products just to find something that's out there. That's how I found Micronoc out there. That product has actually worked for us, while as a lot of other products have not. Now, I don't know about Nutricharge, and that's why we're going to test it. I mean, who knows? It might prove to be a good product and actually increase yield and help us to make more money. But we won't know it until we try it. And I don't necessarily trust a lot of companies testing, because, well, I mean, their goal is, they won't find out if the product works, but their ultimate goal is to sell product and make money. So that's why we like to do our own farm independent testing to find out if this product actually works on our farm, under our agronomic practices, and under the conditions that we face. So in order to test Nutricharge, it's going to be kind of a two-step process. We're going to start out with a product called Powerplant that has Nutricharge in there, but it's also got 2% sulfur, 2% manganese, and 2% zinc. And basically it looks like talc. Now, the most recommended use of Nutricharge is to actually put it out liquid in furrow. Well, we don't have any liquid in furrow capabilities on our planter, so they got this product called Powerplant that's got Nutricharge in there, and the application rate is 3 ounces per bag of corn, and that gives you close to the same amount of Nutricharge in furrow as what a 3.2 liquid rate does. Not quite as much as the 3.2 liquid rate, but pretty close. Plus you get the sulfur, manganese, and zinc. And like I said, it's a two-step process. So we're going to use the Powerplant at planting, and then when we come by and stream on our nitrogen later, we'll also have Nutricharge in there just to be able to test the product in every which way and see if it actually works. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to mix up a bag of seed. Each of our plots is going to be about a ½ acre in size, so we're going to mix up, well, probably going to do 2 bags of seed and mix in 6 ounces of the Powerplant in our tub, get it real mixed up real good. Then we'll put it in our planter. But first, before we do that, we've got our planter vacuumed out. I'm going to go ahead and plant our control, our non-treated. So we're going to put a couple bags of seed in there. I'll go out and plant my 5 strips of untreated, and we'll come back, we'll mix up the Powerplant in with the in with the same variety of seed, and then we'll put it in the planter and go back and plant our 5 treated plots, flag it off, and then whenever we come back with our side dress, we'll add the Nutricharge in with our 32% UAN, spray the 5 Nutricharge plots, and then spray the 5 control plots with just straight UAN. All right, after doing some figuring at our population of 28,000, we're planting a flat rate to take a variable out. One bag of seed at 28,000 will cover 2.87 acres. Our plots are going to be a ½ acre size, so 5 plots. 1 bag ought to cover it if you split it over it evenly. So while Andy's splitting 1 bag of untreated on the planter, I'm going to be mixing up 1 bag with the Powerplant in there. All right, before I go any further, I want to give a huge thanks to Titan Ag LLC for donating this power plant, and also the jug of Nutricharge that they gave me to our research here. You know, we didn't pay anything for this product, and I really appreciate Titan Ag supplying the product, because this 10-pound pail retails for $750, and obviously, you know, for 2.5 acres worth of product, I didn't want to have to spend $750 for the research. So huge thanks to them. They've got locations here in West Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana if you're interested in doing business with them. Now 10 pounds, $750, that works out to a little less than $6 per acre is what this power plant costs. So, you know, versus our Micronoc, $4.65. Now it's two totally separate different products that do different things, so I'm not comparing Micronoc to power plant or anything, but for the little bit of fertilizer and Nutricharge, I mean, it's not cheap to put this out, so we definitely want to make sure it works. All right, we've got our seed in here, so we need 3 ounces. Got this nice little measuring cup here. That's right at 3 ounces. I'm gonna dump it in there, and we're gonna mix it up real good. Make sure we coat every single seed, so that as soon as we start planting this, it's in the trench and immediately available. Now I believe this stuff is also supposed to take place of like any talc or graphite you might use as a seed lubricant also. All right, she's all good and mixed up. Andy's putting our untreated seed in there, and we're not putting any Micronoc in there. So like I said, when you're doing replicated plots, you want to try and eliminate as many variables as possible, and Micronoc would be another variable. So we're just putting plain seeds straight out of the bag for our control plots. All right, first plot going in the ground, and Andy's there to flag it. He's going to be flagging all these plots as we go along, because coming back in this cover crop and trying to flag it afterwards would be kind of difficult. All right, we're planting all of our plots on this end of the field. We're not going all the way to the end, because up here on the upper end of the field is the most consistent. Again, we want to try and isolate as many variables as possible. So if we were to plant all the way down there, we'd be dealing with different soil types and field conditions as we go across the field, which could impact yields. So we got another set of inrows right here that's squared off with the other set to make a perfectly square plot. Skip our next pass, because that will be our first treated plot, and then get lined up with our pass after that. Tell you what, y'all can say what you want to about GPS and the headaches that we experience having to deal with it, but when it comes to actually putting in plots and everything, it is an absolute game changer. It makes it so much easier. You're able to be so much more precise. Man, I love it when exact calculations work out. We don't hardly have any seed, so we got to back them out now. I'll definitely say something about this power plant that's obvious. It's got some kind of glitter in there. I mean, Kelly gonna think I've been at a strip joint or something. I got glittery stuff all over my hands and arms. All right, first Nutricharge plot going in. And basically all we're going to do is just go in here and fill in the gaps with our treated. Now there might be some of y'all out there saying I'm spending too much time showing the process of us putting in a plot. Main reason I'm doing it is to have, you know, video proof that we're doing it to the best of our abilities scientifically, and that you'll be able to trust the data that we're going to get off of these plots, just to, you know, document it every step of the way. And one thing I'd like to do with these plots, if I've got time this summer, which that could be a stretch, is I hope to get out here and take tissue samples from the treated and the untreated plots, because one thing the Nutricharge is supposed to do is make phosphorus more available. So if we consistently see higher phosphorus tissue levels in the treated versus the untreated, well, we'll know that it's actually doing something. However, increased nutrient concentrations in the tissue doesn't always lead to increased yield. When we first started testing Nutricharge from Corteva, which is a product that's supposed to introduce live bacteria into a plant and help the plant make its own nitrogen, we did see a very strong positive result in tissue test and nitrogen concentration levels of the plant. However, those increased nitrogen levels of the plant did not lead to greater yields. So hopefully with this Nutricharge, I'll be able to test, both aspects, getting more phosphorus into the plant and then hopefully see some kind of yield increase also. All right, we just got all 10 replications knocked out, and I'm just down here just double checking the flagging, making sure all the flags are in the right place. I'm not doubting Andy's flagging ability at all, but one thing I've learned, one simple mistake in putting in a scientific plot like this can mean the difference between having good data and bad data for that entire year for that product. So just going to do a little double checking here. Tell you what, it's hard to find it's really hard to find flags out here in this cover crop. All right, there we go, right there. Yeah, it's on the first row of that plot, and y'all do plots, definitely flag them off, and if you do flag them, you're gonna have written on there whatever it is you're testing, but be sure to roll them up like that. Because if there's one thing I've learned from years of doing research is that the ink on the flags, just like your memory, can fade over time. So if you leave the flags, like a permanent marker written on them just out here waving around, sun all year long, it'll bleach that ink out. And then you get out here, you try to remember, what product did I have where, which strips are treated, which strips are untreated. You go look at flags and all you got is a blank flag. So that can also screw things up too. It's happened to me in the past. Yeah, there's another one right there, curled up. All right, this plot's done. Now we're gonna get filled back up with seed. We still got one more plot to put in over here, and it's not gonna be a product plot though. It's gonna be a practice plot. So when we get to it, I'll explain exactly what we're doing there. Good job flagging, Andy. Everything looks right. All right, we got planted over here to where my next set of plots is going to be. Now you see, we've already got a flag out here because on this plot, we're not testing an actual product, we're testing a practice. Last year we bought our own inline ripper and we started ripping a lot of ground. But just like I said with the products that we use, we also test our practices. So I wanted to actually put in some replicated plots to find out if ripping actually pays or pays for us. I mean, there's no doubt that ripping can definitely pay in certain circumstances if you have, compaction and whatever. Well, looking out at this field with all this cover crop and stuff, compaction probably not going to be an issue for us like it is a lot of other people. We got all these roots, busting up any kind of compaction we may cause throughout the year with our implements and stuff. So really not worried about compaction all that much, except in maybe some really high traffic areas. But what we are dealing with is we're dealing with a fragipan we're trying to bust up to let our annual ryegrass roots to really penetrate it even more and get rid of that fragipan. Last time we actually used tillage on this farm was 23 years ago. So, I mean, it's possible it does have some areas of compaction, but, again, we just don't want to spend a lot of money on diesel fuel, ripping a lot of ground without knowing if it actually works for us. So that's what we're doing here. Last fall when we were ripping, we had soybeans on this ground. We came in with a ripper, and then I would leave out 12 rows. I'd rip 12 rows, leave out 12 rows. And anyway, we replicated that 4 times to where I've got it marked over there. So this first 12 rows is going to be completely no-till, hasn't been ripped. The next 12 is going to be ripped, and then we'll alternate it for 4 times going across the field. So anyway, we had our flag on our first row of the plot up there. I'm going to move it right back here to where our end rows are, so it's a lot easier for me to find this fall. Because even these bicycle flags can be kind of tough to find when you got corn taller than what the flags are. And then I got my little marking flags there in the cab, and after I plant these plots, I'll come back here and mark each one of the plots to make them easy to find. All right, looking at our down pressure map here, I was hoping to see something on this screen with these plots right here, seeing if the where I ripped took less planter down pressure in order to make ground contact, and I might see a hair difference, but really not much difference. This pass right there, that was our first pass no-till. Here's our second pass with rip. This is our third pass with no-till that we're doing right now. And you look at the scale over here, the greens and the purples and the blues is less downforce. So it looks like this rip plot maybe just took just a hair less downforce to get full ground contact of the planter, but really not seeing anything hugely definitive on that map right there. Not really disappointing. It really doesn't make any difference one way or the other. You know, what really going to make the difference is how well the roots can penetrate the soil, but I was hoping to see some kind of a visual reference here on this map. All right, we just got done planting our plots, so we're going to move. I can pull it out of the ground. I'm going to move this one back here to our end rows. I know one thing, that flag sure does pushing the ground a little bit easier on that ripped plot than what it did the conventional till plot. All right, the only thing that's left is to go in, mark each plot with our orange flag, and then we'll be ready to roll on, plant the rest of our corn. All right, that's going to be all the plot work we're going to put in on corn this year. So now it's just straight planting. Let's get this in the ground as quickly as possible. We got right at 200 acres of corn left to plant. We got rain supposed to be coming in almost tomorrow night or Wednesday evening, kind of slowly increasing chances of rain. So I sure would love to get all of our corn planted just in time to get that rain. Well guys, like I said earlier in this video, the one practice that will always provide a return on investment is conducting your own research on your own farm under your specific conditions with your agronomic practices. I'm not saying you shouldn't put any stock into any other research you see. You know, I believe independent research, whether it's by university extension or other independent agronomists not tied to companies, you know, I believe that's all valuable, but it's not done on your farm with your soil types under your practices. You know, it's valuable, but not as valuable as putting in your own plots. You know, I'm not saying that test plots from, you know, these major manufacturers that are providing the products, I'm not saying it's not valuable. It can be valuable. You know, just be a little skeptical of the data, because remember, their goal is to sell product. They're going to show you the good data, but are they also going to show you the bad data that proves that their product didn't work in a plot? I mean, you just don't know unless you're the one actually, you know, acquiring all the data. So I'm not saying don't discount all other data, but, you know, just keep it in the back of your mind that it's not going to be as good as the data that you can get off your own farm. Yeah, it takes a lot of time and effort to put in these replicated plots. I mean, I could have planted another 30 or 40 acres by now and definitely would have got done before the rain. But I guarantee you the few hours that I spent putting in these plots will make me more money, or keep me from spending money that won't return me more money than anything else I do on the farm. You know, over the course of the years, you know, we've cut back our inputs because we found by testing them that they just weren't providing a positive return on investment. They were costing me dollars per acre, and at the very best, I was just breaking even on it. I wasn't making any extra income. You know, 2014 is what I like to say is the last year that I farmed out of a jug, where, I mean, I was throwing all these inputs in there. I wasn't really doing the research to find out if they worked or not. I was trusting, you know, the manufacturer's word that, yeah, it'll give me that extra 2, 3, 4 bushels an acre. You know, it only costs $3 or $4 an acre. And I'm not gonna lie, I had fantastic yields in 2014. Absolutely fantastic. But up to that point, even though we had some of the best yields I'd ever had, we made the least amount of money I had ever made. And then once I started turning a critical eye to a lot of those products and testing them and finding out all they were doing was eating away at my bottom line. They were making the company money, but they weren't making me any extra money. You know, that's when we really started seeing our profitability soaring. So from all that, you might think my goal is to disprove all of these products and prove that they don't work, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. you know, I want to find stuff that works. I want to find stuff that increases yield and actually provides a positive return on investment. I would love to find something that makes me a few extra bushels. Every product that we test, I want to see it succeed and do well, and I put it in the best environment that I can to make sure it does succeed. But there's still also the fact that a lot of these products have not performed well for us, and we have saved a lot of money over the years by not believing every salesman that stops by the farm and testing the product ourselves to find out what works under our conditions and our practices and what doesn't work under our practices. So anyway, guys, it's just straight planting from here on out. I think I'm gonna close out the video here. Hope y'all learned and picked up a lot from this video. If you don't mind, hit that like button. If you like this content, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel also. So anyway, guys, really appreciate the view. We'll see y'all in the next one.